We begin the Gemara today on Daf Yud Aleph, 3 lines from the top of the Yomud. Rav Shora L'Chia Barashi. Rav allowed Chia Barashi to Lemigdal Oyhare, to weave the nets to catch fish, B'chula de Mayeda, on Cholamayed. My time, why does he allow this kind of a work? Maisa had you too. This is work that any plain person could do. Aval Isli, but to weave the nets that are used to catch birds, Osir. Those are larger nets, and my time, what's the reason? Maisa Umanu. For this, you have to be a professional to know how to do this, and a Maisa Uman is not allowed in Cholamayit. Rav Yehuda Shora, Rav Yehuda allowed La'ami Tanura, Ami, which his name was Ami Tanura because he would make ovens, Lemigdal Tanura, to build ovens, even on Cholamayit. Ul Rabbi Bar Isvi, and he allowed Rabbi Bar Isvi, Lemigdal Mohulta, to weave the sieves, also done to be done in Cholamayit. Fragte Gemara, Eini, is this true? Are you allowed to build an oven in Cholamayit? Vatani Rabbi Bar Shmuel, but Rabbi Bar Shmuel learned Vishavin. Everybody agrees she'ein goydlin tana lechatchila, that you're not allowed lechatchila to go and build an oven on Cholamayit, or to build an oven from scratch on Cholamayit. Answers the Gemara, lo kashya. It depends on what season of the year it is. Can be Maisa Chama. If it's in the summer season, meaning it's Cholamayit Pesach, so then it's very dry outside. So if you're building an oven on Cholamayit, you can use that oven on Cholamayit itself to cook with it because it's going to dry quickly. Can be Maisa Kshamim, but if it's Cholamayit Sukkis and it's wet outside, so the oven that you build on Cholamayit won't be ready for use on Cholamayit. So you're doing the work for after Cholamayit. So then you're not allowed to do it on Cholamayit. Sagt the Heilige Mishnah, continuing the halachas of Cholamayit. Oisin ma'ke legag ulamirpeses. You're allowed to make a small fence for a rooftop or for a porch. Maisa hedyet. If you're doing it like the way a plain person knows how to do it. Avaloi maisa uman. Not if it's being done like a professional does it. Which the Gemara will explain the difference. Shafin esasedokin. You can smooth out the cracks in an oven. Umagilin oisan. And you could also, b'magila, so you have this roller that you roll on it to smooth out these cracks, or biyad, or beregel, you can do it by hand to smooth out the cracks, or with your foot to smooth it out. Avaloi b'mecholtzayim, but not with this type of utensil that has a certain shape. Rashi says it has a shape like a foot, and it's something which is done more of a professional work. That is not allowed to be done in Cholamayit. Hatzir v'hatziner. So this is the doors back in the times of Chazal. You have this many times in the Gemara. The doors then were not hung with hinges like the doors today. So there was a hole in the ground and a hole in the ceiling. There was 2 holes, and there was a pivot in the door on the top at the bottom, and they put it inside. So the tzir is the pivot in the door, and the tzinner is the hole in the ground. So if any of these were ruined, then you have to fix them or you have to make them. V'hakaira, or the beam that's on top of the door, v'hamanol, the lock of the door, v'mafteach, the key for the door, shenishberu, that were broken, misaknon b'mayit. You're allowed to fix any of these in Cholamayit. If you have your house without a door, people will come in, it's a davar of it, you're allowed to fix this. As long as this wasn't something that he already had to fix before, and he pushed it off to be done on Cholamayit. Another halacha sagt the Mishnah, v'chol kuvashin, all kinds of things that you pickle. Shu yachal lechem and b'mayit, if you're pickling it and you're able to eat this on Cholamayit, kaivshan. You can pickle it in Cholamayit. But if you're pickling things just for the future, for after Cholamayit, that's not allowed. Sagt the Gemara, heichi dami ma'isa hedyet. When it said in the Mishnah to make a fence on a rooftop or a porch, what's considered to be something that a plain person does? Rav Yosef Amas, Rav Yosef says, we had this before in the Gemara, behutze v'dafne. If you're building a fence from palm branches or laurel branches, so it's not something professional. B'masnita tana, in a braisa it says, tsar b'tzror, you put up some rocks, ve'ne toch betit, you're not cementing it. Then it said in the Mishnah, shafin esasdokin, you can smooth out the cracks in an oven, or magila noisam b'magila, you're also allowed to smooth it out with a roller. And then afterwards it said in the Mishnah, you can do it by hand or by foot. If the Mishnah is saying you're allowed to do it with a roller, with a special utensil for this, Does the Mishnah have to continue and say that you can do it by hand or by foot without using a utensil? Of course that would be allowed. That's much less professional than using an actual roller. Answers the Gemara, Hachikama. The way to read the Mishnah is as follows. Shofin is hasedokin. You can smooth out the cracks. Umagila noisan, and you could also roll it ke'en magila, similar to the way you would do it with a roller. Biyad uberegel. If you're doing it with your hand or with your foot. So the Mishnah is not actually saying you can do it with the roller. You could do it with your hand and your foot, similar to the way you would do it with the roller. Avaloi b'mechaltzayim, but you can't do it with this utensil called a melchatzayim, and that, for that matter, also not with this actual magila itself. The actual utensil that's used for smoothing it out is not allowed to be done, only by hand or by foot. Then it said in the Mishnah, atzir, v'atzinner, v'akaire, v'amanol, v'mafteach, all these different parts of a door that were broken, shenishberu, misakna b'mayid. You can fix them on chol hamayid. Frag the Gemara v'ramini, so they asked us to another Mishnah that it says in the end of Saita, that ad yomov, until the days of Yechanan Kohen Gadol, hoya patish make b'Yerushalayim cholo. So on Chol hamayid, people would bang with a hammer on Chol hamayid in Yerushalayim. And then he instituted that they should not be fixing things with a hammer on Chol hamayid. So what does it mean? Ad Yomavin, until his times that was allowed, but Mikan ve'elech, after his times, loy, he instituted that you should not do this kind of work that makes such a noise in Chol hamayid. So how does it say in our Mishnah that you can fix all these parts of the door, which involves using a hammer and banging with it in Chol hamayid? Answers the Gemara, like Kashi, it's not a question. Kan b'denafchi, if you're fixing it's with metal, a metal door, or it's something which is metal that makes a lot of noise, that's not allowed. And kan b'denagri. Over here in our Mishnah, it's talking about a wooden door, a wooden pivot, a wooden hole, a wooden lock, and so on, which doesn't make so much noise, so that's allowed.
What is the problem?
Yeah, apparently part of the problem. That's what the Gemara understands now. So the Gemara says, Maskefla Rav Chiste. So Rav Chiste asks him this. Yitaka doesn't hold this distinction. Doesn't matter what kind of noise it makes. Yoimru, people will say, Kol Rabba Ase, that on Chol hamayid, things that make a loud noise, that's not allowed. Kol Zut Shari, and things that make a little bit of a noise, that is allowed. What kind of a distinction is this for Chol hamayid? Makes no sense. Elam Rav Chiste, so therefore Rav Chiste said differently. Lo Kashya, it's not a question from what it says there. Ha b'magli. Over here, it's talking about the person that's using a magli, which is some kind of a saw, that you can do it without making any noise whatsoever. And ha bechatzini. And over there, it's talking about when a person is doing the work with a chatzini, which is an axe, and it makes noise, even if it makes a low noise, but it makes any noise whatsoever. So this is a kind of activity that you're doing a chol hamayid. It's a davara of it, right? But if it's a davara of it, then you're doing the work in such a way that it makes a very loud noise. But for Hesya, that he was masakin, it shouldn't be allowed. But if you're doing the work for this davara of it, and it makes no noise, that's allowed. Rav Papa says, no, the answer is simple. Kan kaidim gzeira. Our Mishnah is telling you the halacha before Yechanan Kohen Gadol made the gzeira not to allow to do this in Chol hamayid. And kan lach gzeira. And then that Mishnah that says about that once he made the gzeira, he decreed that they should not do this kind of work on Chol hamayid. Rav Ashi says yet another answer. Ha Rab Yehuda and ha Rab Yosi. That there's a machlokes between Rab Yehuda and Rab Yosi regarding doing malach and Chol hamayid for a davara of it, when it is something where there is a loss. So the machlokes is, Rab Yehuda says, even when it's a davara of it, you still have to do it with a shinui. You can't do it the normal way. Rab Yosi says, if it's a davara of it, that's work that's allowed to be done on Chol hamayid, you don't have to make any shinui. So our Mishnah is following the opinion of Rab Yosi, and therefore you're allowed to fix the door, the pivot, and whatever else in the door without any shinui. And over there, the takana of Yechanan Kohen Gadol that did not allow this to be done goes according to Rab Yehuda that says that it should not be done in the normal way with the normal noise. It has to be with a shinui. The Gemara here, but we're going to have this in Amud Beis right over here. The next Mishnah, we'll see. Omer Rab Yitzchak bar Avdimi. Rab Yitzchak bar Avdimi said, Man Tana Shinui b'Moed b'Davara of it. Who is the Tana that says that on Chol hamayid, even if it's something where there is a loss, and you're allowed to do the malacha with this, but nevertheless it should be done with a shinui? The like Rabbi Yosi. This is not Rabbi Yosi's opinion. Rabbi Yosi says if there's a loss, you can do the malacha fully without any shinui. Sagt the Gemara, Amar Ravina said, Kaman madlinon ha'idne kavyusa dedasha. According to who do we pick up and repair that beam that's on top of the door on Chol hamayid, b'chol hamayid? Without any shini, we repair this. On another section on the top of the door, we repair this. Kaman Karab Yaisi. This is according to Rabbi Yaisi that says that if it's a davar ha'avid, you can fix it without any shini whatsoever. The next halacha of our Mishnah was Kvashin Shuhu Yachal Lechel B'Moed Katan. If you have things that you're pickling on Chol HaMoed, if it's for what you could eat, then on Chol HaMoed, it's allowed. Not for pickling for later, for after Chol HaMoed. So the Gemara tells us what happened in one place. Bedisa Livoi. There was this river called Bedisa in the city of Livoi. Kavri. So what they did was they diverted the water of the river, and then the fish came into that area, and everyone was able to catch a lot of fish. So Azla Kule Alma, everyone came. Tzud, they caught fish. Aisa Kavra, and they brought their fish home. And Shara Lahu Rava allowed them Lemimlach Minayu, to salt these fish, to pickle these fish. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye said to Rava, but Vatnan, in the Mishnah we learned, Kvashin Sheyachal Lechem Ben B'Moed, if you pickle things they can eat from them on Chol HaMoed, Kaivshan. You can pickle it. So over here, they had a lot of fish that they were pickling, and they had even more than they could eat in Chol HaMoed. So why did Rava allow it? Amalei, so Rava answered Abaye, Kivin de Meikara, Adaita da Achila Isinu, since initially they brought the fish, they captured all these fish in order to have it for Chol HaMoed, to eat in Chol HaMoed. So now what happened? Now they had leftovers. Now if all this fish that they caught, if you're going to leave over some and not pickle all of it, pasdi. So the fish that they had that they're not going to pickle is going to get ruined. So therefore, keprakmatia ha'avedami. It's like merchandise, like business that you have, that if you don't do it now, it's going to be lost. So that's a lot of Chol HaMoed, v'shari. Ve'kedamri. Others say the story was a bit different. Shari lohu Rava allowed them, meitzad, mezel, he allowed them to go and catch the fish, to go and aisuya, and they brought it, to mimlach, and to pickle it, to salt it. He allowed them to do this, even though he knew that they're doing it for the purpose of business, to sell it, and not for what they need, for Chol HaMoed to eat, and Chol HaMoed itself. Amalei Abaye, and therefore on this Abaye asked him, but v'ho'anan kvashin sheyachal lechem mehen koivshon tanan. In our Mishnah it says, to pickle on Chol HaMoed is only allowed what you're eating, then on Chol HaMoed. So how are you allowing them to pickle all these fish that they're using to sell for later? Amalei, so Rav answered him, Hani nami, these fish as well, even though now when they're pickling it, they're not planning to eat it for now. It's going to be ready later after Chol HaMoed. But even these fish, misachli agav itzitza, they could be eaten if you rinse it off and press out all the salt and the pickling things that there are in it. And if you'll properly rinse it off, they will be able to eat it now on Chol HaMoed. And therefore I allow them to do this, because if they want, they can eat it now as well. And the Gemara brings an example for this. Kiha de Shmuel, like the story with Shmuel, Avdele shitn itzitzi, they rinsed it off 60 times, and vachal, he was able to eat fish that was very strongly salted and pickled, so you see that you can eat it even after it's pickled. Rave, another incident similar, so Rave ikla lebei Reish Galusa, he was at the house of the Reish Galusa, Avdele shitn itzitzi, vachal, and also they took the pickled fish and they rinsed it off many times and he ate it. Rav, that is, Ikla lebei Rav Shapir. He came to the house of Rav Shapir. Aisule kameya hu kavra. They brought him a fish. Tilsa bishula, it was a third cooked. Tilsa michle, it was a third salted, pickled. And they had to rinse it off in order to be able to eat it. And tilsa tavya, and a third of it was broiled, and he was able to eat it. Omar Rav, the Gemara gives us some interesting things over here regarding eating fish. So Rav said, Omali Ada Tzaida. Ada, a fish catcher that is, told me as follows. Kavra, the fish that you catch, Samach lemisriche, when it's close to getting spoiled, Miley. That's the best time to eat it. Don't eat the fish right after you catch the fish. Wait a little bit, and right before it spoils, that's the best time to eat the fish. So Taisus over here already says that we see Bisman Hazeh, that it's not a good idea to leave your fish and only eat it right before it gets spoiled. Adarabah, that's a sakana. You should eat your fish as soon as you can. Some Rishonim say that it depends where you're catching your fish and what kind of, if you got catching it in a lake or in a river or in the ocean, this depends. Some fish, you have to leave it in order for it to get rid of from the water. It's not healthy to eat it. So certain waters that it comes from, you have to wait. Other fishes, no adarabah, the fresher it is from the water, the better it is to eat. V'amarav, Amali Adet Saida, another thing Adet Saida told me, Kavre, when you have a fish, this is what you should do with it. Tavye ba'achua, you should roast it with its brother, which is with salt. The salt comes from the water, and the fish come from the water. So therefore the salt is called its brother. Asuke ba'avua, and then you should after you roast it, you should put it into water, which is its father, because fish come from the water; they were created from the water. And then meichle bebrei, and you should eat it together with its son. What's its son? The son is the fish brine that comes out of it. So the son that comes from a father. So the fish brine that comes out of the fish, you should eat it together with the fish. And then ishti alei avua. After you eat fish, you should also drink with it from its father, which is the water. Vamarav, Rav said another thing that Ameli Ada Tzaida, Ada the fish catcher told me, kavra, fish, tachli, cress, v'chalba, and milk, litin gufa, your body should carry this weight, and which means that if you're eating this in the evening, don't go immediately to sleep. Allow your body to carry this weight for some time. And v'loy litin puria, and not that your bed should carry this weight. In other words, these things, it's not a good idea to go to sleep immediately after you eat. Vamarav, Rav said, Amali Ada Tzaida, another thing Ada Tzaida told me, kavra, fish, tachli, cress, and v'chalba, and milk, maya v'loy shichra. The best is to drink water and not beer after you eat them. And if you only have beer, so it's better shichra v'loy chamra. It's better to drink beer after you eat these things and not to drink wine. Hadran aloch mashkin beis hashlachin. This is the conclusion of mashkin beis hashlachin, the first pedic of Masechta Moed Katan. Okay, the Mishnah continues the halachas of Chol Hamoed, but it also brings in the halachas of an oval. There are similar halachas b'negeh to an oval that he's not allowed to work in the time of his avelus, and a lot of Masechta Moed Katan is going to be about these halachas of an oval not being allowed to work. Sagt the Mishnah, Misha hafach hazeisav, a person has his olives that are in a barrel and they're there. They used to put the olives in a barrel in order for them to sort of become prepared, to be able to press them. So they become a little bit soft and they open up to be able to press them. So he turns them over to see whether they're ready to be pressed already. So now it came to the time that it was ready to be pressed. But v'iru evel, and then he became an oval, and an oval is not allowed to do any work. Oy oinus, or we're not talking now about an oval, we're talking about a person that had his olives ready before Yom Tiv for them to be pressed, and some oinus, something out of his control happened, and he couldn't press them before Yom Tiv. Oy shetu poelim, or he hired workers to get them pressed, and these workers misled him, and they didn't do the work, they didn't show up. So now comes Chol Hamoed. So this Mishnah here is now talking only about Chol Hamoed, and it's telling you, so what do you do on Chol Hamoed with these olives? If you're going to leave them in this barrel and you're not going to press them, they're going to get ruined. So Tayin Kaira Rishaina, you can take them out and put them in the press, and you put the first heavy beam on it to press it. Umanicha lachar hamoed, you have to leave it like that until the end of Chol Hamoed. You can't finish the pressing completely. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, this is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. This is the point we had before. Rabbi Yehuda says, even by a davar ovid, which is allowed to be done on Chol Hamoed, but it has to be done with a shinui. You can't do the malacha fully, even on Chol Hamoed. Rabbi Yosi says, Zaylef, v'gaimer, you can press it fully and have it drip fully, and then v'gof, kedarkai, and seal it properly as you usually do it. Since this is a davar ovid and it's allowed to be done on Chol Hamoed, you can do it completely on Chol Hamoed. So now the Gemara addresses the understanding of this Mishnah. Pasach be'evel, the Mishnah began with the scenario of a person that had these olives ready to be pressed, and he became an oval, and he can't do his work. V'siyim b'mayit, and it concludes with only telling you the actual halacha, what happens on Chol Hamoed, what are you allowed to do? It didn't say regarding the oval what he is allowed to do. So what is the halacha with an oval? Amar Rav Sheisha Bereid Ravidi, so Rav Sheisha Bereid Ravidi says, Zoi Semeres, what this Mishnah is telling me is, Dvaram HaMatarim B'mayid, those things that are allowed to be done on Chol Hamoed, as we said, it's a davar ovid and it's allowed, Asurim B'mei Evloi. But in the time of a person being an ovel, it won't be allowed. That's exactly the point of the Mishnah. It was coming to tell you that for an Chol Hamoed this would be allowed, but for an ovel it would not be allowed. That's why I didn't tell you that heter for the ovel. Ravashi says, no, the reverse. The Mishnah is saying, needless to say that for an oval he would be allowed. Needless to say that a person in his time of his avelos, the fact that you don't do work as an oval is only a isra midrabanan v'shari, so it'll be allowed for him in this case where he was caught in the middle of this and it's going to be a loss for him, that it would be allowed, even cholamayid isim malachim dairaisa, where the work that's not allowed to be done on cholamayid is minatayre b'makim pseide sharu rabbanan. But in a case where there's a loss, the rabbanan allow you to do this malacha. So there's a machlekes rishonim. I mentioned this in the beginning of the Masechta, how you learn these words of the Gemara, isim malachim dairaisa. Rashi's opinion is, it means literally. You learn it from a pasuk, that the malacha on cholamayid that's not allowed is isim minatayre. But this Isam and Torah is unique. The Torah gave it over to the Chachamim to decide which malachas should be asa and which should not. And therefore, in a case where there's a davar of it, Chachamim allowed. Taisvis, many Rishonim hold that malachat medairaisa in the Gemara here does not mean malachat medairaisa. It means it has an asmachta and a source and a pasuk of the Torah, which Avelis does not. And therefore, we're more stringent about that. So the Gemara Tanya Kvasei Rav Shesha Bereder Avidi. We learned in the Braise, like Rav Shesha Bereder Avidi, that an oval is not allowed to do this work when it is Avelis, even if it's a davar of it. It says, Elu dvarim ha'osin la'avol b'mei evloi. These are the works that another person is allowed to do for the oval in the time of his avelos. Zeisav afuchin, if he already has his olives that are turned over, that he inspects them, and he sees that they are ready to be pressed. So someone else is allowed to go and load it into the press to press them. So right here you see in the Braise, like Rav Shesha Bereder Avidi said, the oval himself is not allowed to do this. Other halachas this Braise says, and this is a pretty long Braise here, almost till the end of the Yamud. V'kadoi loguf, if he has a barrel or a jug that has to be sealed properly, that's a work that someone else could do for the oval. U'pishtane lahalois, or to take his flax, lahalos min mishra, to take it out of the place where it's soaking. If he's going to leave it there, it's going to get ruined. Or v'tzamrei lahalos min hayera, to take out the wool from a pot where it's being dyed. U'marbitzim sadeu, and also they can water his field. Mishatagia oines hamayim shalei, when it comes the time to water it. So all of these malachis you do for an oval. The oval doesn't do it himself. Rabbi Yehuda says, Avzoiron leisdei nir. You could also plant for him a field that's been plowed already. And v'sadai medes lepishton, and also a field that's designated to plant flax in it, and there's a certain time in a season when you have to plant it, and if the season's going to pass, they won't be able to plant. Amruloid, Chachamim argued with Rabbi Yehuda, and they told him, Im loid tizra bebachir, if you're not going to plant this plowed field now, and it's going to grow earlier in the season, tizra ba'afel, so they'll plant it later in the season. So it's not such a loss if they don't do the work for him now. V'im loid tizra pishton, if they won't plant for him the flax now in the time when you have to plant, so then tizra miminache. You can plant the field another kind, and therefore this is not work that you can do for an oval. Rab Shimon Gamliel says, Zeisav afuchin, if he has his olives ready to be pressed, ve'ein sham uman elohu, he's the only professional that knows how to press this. Kadei logov, that is, if he has his barrel that has to be sealed properly, ve'ein sham uman elohu, there's no one else that's a professional that knows how to do this besides himself. Pishtani lahalis min mishra, to take out the flax from the place where it soaks, or v'tzamrei lahalis min hayera, or to take out the wool from the pot. Ve'ein sham uman elohu, he's the only one that knows how to do this. So in such a case, he can do it himself. He should do this privately, quietly himself. Yasser al-Kain, Omer Rab Shimon Gamliel. Even further, Rab Shimon Gamliel said regarding an oval that there are times that he can even do malacha in his time of avelis publicly. If he was a professional worker for the public, the sapa or balon, he's a barber or he's a bathhouse attendant, l'rabim for everybody. V'yigia eisa regel, and it comes the time before Yom Tov, ve'en shamuman elohu, and there's no other professional that could do the work besides himself. Harezeh yaseh, so he is allowed to do this work for everybody in his time of avelos, even in the public. Ho'arisin, now the halacha, different halachas regarding a novel, an odel, which is an oris. An oris is a person that takes a certain share in the crop of the field. He's working and he makes up with the owner of the field that he gets a certain percentage of the produce of the field. Chakirin are people that actually rent the entire field, the entire crop of the field they rent, and they pay the owner of the field a certain set price, certain set percent, that is, of the produce of the field. Or v'hakablanin, which is the exact reverse. Kablanin are people that are hired to work in the field, and the owner is paying them a certain set amount of the produce of the field. So they can't do the work themselves in the time of their avelos. Others should take their place and do it for them. Hachamarin, camel riders that transport things with their camels. Again, that's donkeys. Chamarin is donkeys. Gamalin, or camel riders that transport, or vasaponim, or people that transport things with ships. Hare elu lo yasu. So they should not do this work themselves. Hare elu lo yasu. They should not do this work themselves in the time of their avelus. V'im hayu muchkarin oy muskarin. If they were already hired, they already rented out their camels or donkeys, or they were already hired to do this work, etz lachein, for other people, and then in the middle of the time when they were doing their work, they became avelim. Hare elu yasu. So then they could do this work even on Chalamayid. So the Mefarshim explained the difference between this case and the people that are working in the fields. Someone that's working in a field, so it's very easy to replace you with someone else. But if you're in the middle of transporting something, and you're in the middle of the road, you're in the middle of doing your work, and you become an oval, if you stop doing this, and you have to unload your donkey and load it, another person has to take it, so there's a big loss involved over here. Someone else, you have to pay someone else, you have to find someone, so it's not so easy to find someone else. So in such a case, you can continue doing the work yourself, even though you're an oval. So the Braisa continues, Schir Yaim, if you're hired and you're being paid for the day. Afilu bi'ir acheres, even if you're in a different city and people don't know who you are and what happened with you, and you became an oval, lo yasa, you should not do the work in the time of avelus. Haisa meleches acherim biyodai, if you had work of other people that you were hired to do. Afal pi shebikibailas, even if this is work that you were hired bikibailas. Bikibailas means you're not being paid for the time, for the day or so on, but you're being hired for the job. That you do it on your own schedule whenever you want, and you have to get the job done. So it's in your hands to do it when you want. Lo yaseh, so you should not do this work. So the Gemara now clarifies the pshat and the lashon of the Braisa. Afal pi shebikibailas. Why is the Braisa using this expression, even though you're doing it on your own? V'loi mibayeh she'eni kibailas. Needless to say, if it's not a work that you could do on your own schedule, that you're hired to do the job, adarabeh kibailas kididei dami. If you're doing it on your own schedule, that you can do the job whenever you want, so this is something that you're doing sort of for yourself on your own schedule. For sure, if you're an oval, you shouldn't be allowed to do this kind of a job. So the Gemara says, you're right, we have to read the Braisa as follows. Ela eime, the way to read the Braisa is, ben kibailas, ben she'eni kibailas. When you're an oval, whether it's kibailas that you are hired to do the job, or she'eni kibailas, you were hired on a certain day, and you have to stick to that time frame to do the work, so you're hired by someone else, lo yasa, as an oval, you shouldn't do this work. If your work was in someone else's hand, he hired someone else to do work for you, and you became an oval. So if the person that's working for you is working in your house, lo yasu, they shouldn't do the work for you in your house, because then it looks like you're helping them, you're participating with this work in your house. But if it's bebayis acher, if it's in another house somewhere else that he's doing the work, yes, they're allowed to do the work for you when you're an oval. Sagt the Gemara, Marian berei de Rovin, Marian the son of Rovin, and also Umar berei de Ravache berei de Rove. So these two individuals, so they were partners. Havalu hu gamle de ture bahadi adodi. So they had their oxen that would put together in one, in one yoke, that they would plow the fields. These two oxen of these two Tanoim or these two Amirayim would work together. So Isra be milse b'mar berei de Ravache berei de Rove. Something happened, in other words, he became an oval, so one of the partners became an oval. And what did he do? Upaske legamle. So he took out his ox from the yoke, they worked together, and he took out his. And now, so his partner is stuck. He can't go and plow by himself. Ravashi said about this, Gavre Rabbe, a great person like this, Kemar Barei de Ravache, Avadachi does like this, that he causes a loss to his partner, that he took out his ox. I understand that for his own loss he wasn't concerned. He's an oval and he's not allowed to work at this time. But for the loss that it causes for others, he's not concerned about this. Didn't we learn before in this Braisa that we just quoted? If he was already hired to do the work when he was a camel driver or with a boat and so on, and he was already hired for someone else, you should continue doing the work, because if not, it's going to be a loss for someone else. It's not just a loss for you. So over here with a partner, you should be allowed to continue doing the malacha, because you're going to cause a loss for someone else. Answers the Gemara, V'hu savar, but he held, this Mar Bereder Avache, he held, Adam Choshev Shani, a person that's Adam Choshev, for him it's not allowed, because everybody knows that this belongs to him and this is his partner. So if an Adam Choshev, you're not allowed to do the work in the time of Yavelos, even though it's causing a loss for your partner.